Hi, I'm Neal Foard, founder of Storyfire, a storytelling for business course for executives. And I am going to be a guest on the Online Prosperity Show.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights from industry trailblazers. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And today, we've got a guest whose storytelling prowess has not only captured audiences, but has also inspired movements towards kindness and authenticity. Now, Neal, how are you doing today?
Hey, it's nice to have, nice of you to have me on your show, Prosper.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I think we're going to be telling stories and really showcasing to people how they can use this most powerful tool that we have, which a lot of people seemingly don't know how to use. And I can't wait to jump in so that we can help people inspire, persuade, entertain, or even connect with their audiences.
All right. Well, I'll be happy to join, to fulminate on that as much as you like.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for choosing the Online Prosperity Show, for being the place where you learn and grow. Now, Neal Foard with us today is the founder of Storyfire. And a tidbit of information that you might not know, but you will soon to realize, is he's spent over 25 years in advertising and marketing, and he's been creating award-winning campaigns for global brands like Budweiser, Lexus, and Sony. So you might have experienced some of his work without even realizing that you're actually interacting with his stories and the work that he has done. So he has now transitioned from corporate, storytelling to now sharing heartfelt narratives on social media. And this has actually made him into a modern day sage, reminding us of the goodness of everyday people. Now, obviously, we could go on and on about all of these things, but we're here to listen to the power of storytelling, and, we might as well hear it straight from you. But there's a lot of stuff, Neal, on the internet about personal branding and telling stories and things of that nature. First of all, maybe you can give us your opinion on how are people doing it and how could you be doing it better?
The stories are the default communication system of the human creature. We grow up interpreting everything from the stories we tell ourselves. And you can imagine us, it's a 100,000-year-old technology. All of us sitting around a campfire after having just hunted down a bison and sharing with each other, how we're going to do it again tomorrow and what happened today and how should we look at, the fact that we were either injured or safe. Imagine, Prosper, imagine us 30,000 years ago, barely off the savannah, if that, stone tools, spears, and you and I are trying to make sense of a volcano or an eclipse or a drought or an infestation. How do we make sense of these things when we don't have the technological understanding of what's at play? When we feel helpless, we create stories to bring order and explanation to these things. And so what happens is people think that in order to communicate information to another human being in 2025, that it's all about bullet points and email and so on. But the problem is most human beings are actually logic resistant. You can see this again and again, that you can talk till you're blue in the face about a product's advantages, and there's just no emotional connection that gets me over the hump of the inertia of having to switch. There's just so much effort switching from one wireless provider to another or one car brand to another that you really have to come up with some kind of compelling reason to do it. Well, If I were to ask you, after we have our conversation today, what are 3 things I said that were useful? Unless you wrote them down, it's unlikely you'll remember them. But you probably haven't heard the story of the tortoise and the hare or David and Goliath or any of a number of photos. You haven't heard them in 30 years, 25 years. And yet you could tell them back to me right now, whole. You could tell me the entire story and be accurate. How is that possible? Well, because data comes in and gets stored a certain way. Stories comes in and gets stored a different way. Stories are attached to emotions, and people are emotional creatures. We make decisions emotionally. I'll ask you, Prosper, have you ever been involved with somebody that you knew romantically was not good for you, but you couldn't stop yourself? Right? We don't behave rationally and logically. The heart does what it wants. And our brains, the neocortex, the part of our brain that makes us so clever, all that does is it doesn't actually make the decisions. It just rationalizes the decisions. Oh, I bought the Mercedes-Benz because it was safe. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. But you create this story in your head about why you did the things that you've done. So what happens is a story is a magnificent technology for helping you make an emotional connection with someone so that they feel close to you. They don't feel threatened by you. They feel like you understand them, that you see them and hear them, that we're in this together. A story can help you do that. Bullet points will not help you do that. I'll give you a great example from my own experience of a car dealer in the United States. He was a fantastic dealer. His personal motto was, I'll lose a little money to make a friend. And I just thought that was magnificent. And the way that he brought that to life was he would tell his service managers, you know, when you drive into a car dealership in order to get service on your vehicle, there's usually somebody out there with a clipboard that's going to write down all the things you think you need and, you know, tell you how long it's probably going to take, etc. What he would do is he would tell those people, listen, if somebody over the age of 70 comes in, older man, older woman, and it doesn't look like they've got a lot of money, do me a favor, anything that costs less than $100, just do it for free. But don't tell them it's from me. Don't tell them it's the policy of the store. Tell them it's from you. Okay, now this is a story that he's creating. The story goes like this. Instead of saying, oh, they give you free service on anything under $100 at this dealership. No, the story is, I went in for service and this nice young man, we got to talking and he was so lovely. He said, you know what, Mrs. Hotchin-Curtis, it's on me. And now she thinks she's got a guy in the car business and she's going to keep going back to him forever. But here's the magical part of the story. That story doesn't get told once. She tells it to her son because the son is thinking, oh my Lord, a car dealer that didn't try to take advantage of my mom. Oh my God. If he takes care of her, he'll probably take care of me. That's the kind of people they have down there. And the next thing you know, he's bought 11 cars from that dealer. The reason that he's willing to go back again and again for service and to buy cars is because the story that they tell down there is, we're human beings just like you. And sometimes I'd rather have your friendship than your money. Now that is a great personal brand. That's a great brand. The story that it tells is, I'm another human being in business. We're in this together. And our relationship is more important to me than little things. You know, we get caught up in contract law and agreements and signed documents. And you know how when somebody starts picking away at the details of maybe you should have done that and, you know, where's my extra coffee and all that stuff, we lose the connection that creates loyalty beyond reason. What everybody wants in the brand business, especially you and I, Prosper, is loyalty beyond reason. We never want people to rationalize why they should change away from us. What we want to do instead is, yeah, but I like Prosper. You know, I don't care if he charges me $1 extra. What do I care? I just like being around the man. Loyalty beyond reason is the reason why you communicate with stories, because stories tell they're human being speak. And, when I tell you a story, for example, about why I think minor league baseball is a better value for the money than Major League Baseball, it's one thing if I make an argument about it, if I tell you the various points. It's another thing if I tell you the story of a personal experience. And from that story, you perceive exactly what I mean. You feel it. And if we have time, I'd love to tell you the story of my personal experience with minor league baseball. Is that okay? So,
absolutely.
all
Right now, there's just so much to unpack from these little, and you've weaved in so many stories in and amongst, what you're talking about. That lady who's now going to tell his son, and it's because you've given them something to remark about, and I like that a lot. And you also touched on something that so many people don't quite understand, because if I'm thinking of my ancestors, that would have probably been, I'm having a visual right now with the bone sticking through their nose, wearing some sort of animal skin, riding a zebra and coming to tell everyone, hey, I just saw lions there. People are not going to be waiting to say, were they big, were they small, did they have cubs or whatever it is. They're just going to take that story, make sense of that information and act on it. Now, all of this is amazing. And we could just end this podcast here right now. But how did you learn to then be able to do this if everybody else has not been able to unearth what you just given us?
There were two sort of elements. I've told this story a few times, so now I've got down essentially what happened. When I was in advertising, I did not have the great creative talent that many of my colleagues had. And I was not competitive with them on a world-class level. You could just look around you and see some of these people and go, oh my Lord, they just have that. They have the creative spirit, and they have the unbridled, non-judgmental brain that will allow them to generate a lot of ideas. And intimidated by that, I was looking for my value. And one day when my team was competing against another team, I looked at the idea the other team had and I thought, that's a clearly better idea than ours, but I am not going to go down without a fight. So I just put on a show. I mean, I said, if it isn't a good idea, it has to sound like a good idea. And we won that competition unfairly. And I thought, oh, it really does matter how you sell it. It's not just the power of the idea. People often can't see a good idea when they see it. They don't know it when they see it. So when a salesperson presents an idea and puts it in the form of a story, there are two really important things that happen that I only learned later. So here was the first thing. When I tell a story, there's something very interesting that happens to you and I both. And that is, we begin to resonate on the same frequency. They can take women, put them in a room, and if they are there long enough, their menstrual cycles will synchronize. Yeah. If you put human beings in a room, just two of them, for I think it's only something like 45 minutes, their heartbeats will synchronize. And there's something very important about achieving an agreement of energy frequency. When you tell someone a story, they're not watching you, they're in the story with you. They're there with you. And when you get up in front of a room with a presentation made with slides and bullet points, you've probably lost them in the first 6 minutes. They're gone. They're gone. They're not paying attention to you. They're already wondering about what they should be having for lunch. But if you tell them a story, they are with you the whole way because they want to find out how it works out. They want to know what happens to the hero. Do they succeed in spite of the challenges? And in that space where you start to synchronize your vibration of energy, now they want to agree with you. There's a truism about sales and persuasion, which is nobody changes their mind unless they want to. And you've seen this again and again. You can confront somebody about a political issue because to change their mind is to threaten their identity. They are this political party and that's how it's going to be. And I'm I'm not even listening to you. La, 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 la. On the other hand, when you tell them a story and they are in the story, you begin to understand each other as people. So the first thing is that you sort of synchronize, and that makes people, that allows them to change their minds. And once they give themselves permission to change their minds, now it's just a question of, can I charm them enough to where in a fair fight I still win? Right? That was the idea of loyalty beyond reason. It's like, no, I want to give you my money, so take it. All right, I forgot where I was headed with the second.
Absolutely. Now, Neal, obviously, with that, you told of your story of how you were in a marketing sort of team or environment, and you probably didn't think that your skill set really mattered, and you wanted to stand out, which is where yours truly finds themselves so much, because coming from Zimbabwe, knowing nothing and knowing no one but, just me and my backpack of hopes and dreams, I literally had to use my mouth to get to where I'm at, and hence the podcast. And, when you told off that story and then you started talking about the whole synchronicity of everything else, I saw myself in the journey that you took, even though it would have been different because yours was high stakes. I mean, you were dealing with high stakes brands and things like that. I just have to.
Yeah, but you're obviously charming, though, Prosper. You have that gift of charm, and you have a special. If you don't mind my complimenting you, I'd love to explain my view of your particular flavor of charm. So the first thing anyone is ever going to notice about you is positivity. You have a marvelously upbeat, smiling personality, but it's not that dangerous, fake snake oil salesman, where they're being positive and upbeat because they know that that's what makes the sale. It strikes me this is just your default setting. You're a positive person. It does take a positive thinker, an optimist, to have come from Zimbabwe with just the backpack of dreams and said, you know what? I think I can make it. That takes a certain kind of balls.
It's ain't delusional, right? But
maybe, well, maybe a little delusion. I mean, confidence is a very powerful thing. Now, there's a second thing that I think is remarkably charming about you. You have an outward focus. In almost everything we've said, that's the first time I've ever heard you mention yourself. And that is very powerful. When the other person in the conversation is the star, it's a remarkably disarming thing to be interested in somebody else. And that's let's face it, the day and age that we live in, hoaxes, come-ons, fake sales, just general internet trolls, and what am I looking for? The word I'm looking for when you get taken in a scam. The scammers.
Yeah.
Scamming has been weaponized at scale by the web, by the internet. Now you can scam on a scale that's unprecedented. With a modem and a telephone, you can get anything from somebody over the age of 70. Well, it's really important in that environment to not be perceived as a scammer, like too slick. I'll give you an example that I just thought was delightful. I knew this very, very successful woman. She was a marketing executive, very successful for good reasons. She was talented and lovely. She invited me to a luncheon, and it was 12 business women. And at one point, she introduced a salesman who was there to pitch the 12 women on a product that he wanted them all to buy. Now, I'm going to describe the pitch, and you have to tell me how you think it went. So he gets introduced. He stands up, pulls a speech from his pocket, reads it word for word, looks up only once, goes back, quite nervous. It's obvious he's nervous. Finishes the speech, folds it back up without looking up, sticks it back in his pocket, and returns to his seat. Now, it would be reasonable to expect that that was incredibly uncomfortable for the women, and it's doubtful that they would have bought anything. But the actual results were that he sold out his inventory, and two of the women made a special effort to tell him what a wonderful job he'd done. And the reason for this is that he was 7 years old and he was selling cookies that he and his sister had baked so that they could fundraise to go to summer camp. Now, the ridiculousness of his pitch, the sort of amateur hour of the pitch, was part of why it was charming to them. They didn't walk into the office needing cookies. No, but so it's not about the cookies, is it? No, it's about a chance for highly successful, pressurized businesswomen who spend all day having to walk a tightrope between being too bitchy and too controlling and not forceful enough. You know what it's like for businesswomen. They've got to play this role, this theater. And so what happened was, when the little boy appeared, it gave them finally a chance to expose their vulnerable motherly side and enjoy encouraging him.
That's
and
what
drop a few. Right. That's what they were paying for.
Experience. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Now, I want you to imagine, what would it have been like if he was really slick? It would have been creepy. It wouldn't have given them the chance to be as human. The fact that he was vulnerable and terrible was like, oh, that little boy, look at, he's trying so hard and he's nervous. Oh, as opposed to, is this kid going to run for Senate next year? Good Lord. What 7-year-old acts like that? You see what I mean? Authenticity, 100% of the time, authenticity is number one. Number one, authenticity. What does that have to do with storytelling? When you tell a story, your choice of topic, the moral that you draw at the end, the conclusion, that tells us a lot about you. Not just how you tell the story, but what do you choose to speak about? It tells us how you see the rest of us humans in what you choose to talk about. And by the way, when you had asked me about my own sort of journey, the second thing I was going to mention about why I was like storytelling and showmanship was my gig was I came from a family where there were 3 older sisters and then me. And I grew up when Saturday Night Live really was just live. We didn't have DVRs. You had to just, if you didn't see it live on Saturday, you didn't see it. That was it. But nobody in my family wanted to stay up past 11 o'clock on Saturday night, or they were all going to go out on dates, my sisters. So what would happen is it became my role on Sunday morning at breakfast to tell everyone what happened on Saturday Night Live the night before. So I would essentially do the whole show the following morning. And Prosper, that is a great training ground.
I can imagine. There's 3 women.
Yeah. Right.
That's a rough crowd.
If I could make my sisters laugh, I had really the nicest compliment I ever got for any performance I ever did was when my sister Lily said to me, I had told her one of these skits and she remembered it. And then years later we saw a rerun of it and she said, nah, it wasn't as good as when you told it to me. And I thought, oh, well, okay. So that was that exercise of basically doing somebody else's comedy routine the following morning was a school. And that's when I went into advertising, I was borrowing from that training of keep it tight, timing is everything, and when it doesn't land, keep moving.
Absolutely.
Just keep moving.
And I think in that instance, your sister would have also bought into the story of the relationship that you already had with her.
Yeah,
so much that by the time they saw the real act, it didn't have that.
It didn't land the same because they were too accustomed to me doing it. And then they would, it's when you shoot commercials, oftentimes you'll put a musical score on the rough cut. So before the commercial's ready for air, you've already got music on there so that when you show it to the clients for approval, it feels roughly like the ad that it's going to wind up with. Well, what will happen is that after they've approved the rough cut, then you go back and you put the real music on it, which you get a composer to do and somebody to track it. 99% of the time, they're like, that music is terrible. It's like, no, it's not terrible. It's just you're not used to it. You've got what they call demo love. You've fallen in love with the way the first time you saw it.
First cut is the deepest. That's the
right. You're 100% right.
But you left this demo world and you started telling stories on the internet. That was quite a shift. What happened there, Neal?
It was an accident. What had happened was I was in the live events business, things like auto shows and big trade shows and stuff. I had left advertising and gone into live events. I liked live events because it's fun to watch an audience react to what you've created. But what happened was when COVID came around, all of the live events went to zero. I mean, it just went to nothing. So the entire industry, I would say easily 85, 90% of everybody working in the industry was laid off, which happened to me. So I started a little partnership with 3 other partners, and we didn't have enough money to market our service. So I started doing the videos that you see now. I started doing them as advertising for our partnership. And that was just a little, it was a workaround to spending money on advertising. Now, what happened was, as long as I had the camera rolling, I thought, oh, my children never met my father. He had died before they were born. And I always thought that was very sad because I can see things about my children that remind me of him. So it would have been thrilling for him to see these little idiosyncrasies and little traits in his grandchildren. And he never got that. And I thought to myself, what I would love to do is tell stories about my father so that my children will know who he was. And when I would shoot these commercials for our little partnership, I would tack on stories about my father, and so that they would have them. And then I thought, well, the beauty of doing them this way is that someday when I'm dead, if I don't ever meet my own grandchildren, my kids will be able to show their children these things, and they'll know who their granddad was. So it was really just a family archive. That was the origin of it. And then one of the stories in particular, my daughter just loved it, and it used to make her weep. And so she said, I think you should put that on TikTok. So the 2 of us were out at breakfast and we posted it on TikTok while we were having our pancakes. And by the time we were done, it had something like 100,000 views. And so she says, oh, Dad, I think you went viral. No, I'd never been on TikTok before. We started putting these on there and they really hit. They struck a chord because for the reason you mentioned earlier, generally speaking, I would say 90% of the time, the videos that I do are about the ordinary kindnesses of regular people. And there's a real hunger for that, for the reassurance that we're not all awful. What has happened, Prosper, you'll know because you're a sophisticated person, is that media, it benefits from outrage because outrage is engagement. And when somebody is outraged about something or lit up about something, they'll share it or they'll comment on it. And those metrics drive more engagement, and with more engagement, so forth. So what happens is, from our news media to our ordinary videos to newspapers, the whole idea is to spark division for the purposes of engagement.
But Neal, that used to feed you for 20 years because then that would then trigger commercials, because then they sell advertising and it's a whole...
Well, advertising largely has to be positive. The news is negative, then they hit the commercial break and all of a sudden there's your a little respite. Negative advertising, it works in politics because, again, it sparks outrage and people are driven more by fear than they are by hope. But let me rephrase that. It's not that they're driven more by fear. It's more likely that they will act out of fear than out of hope. Fear demands an instantaneous response. Hope is something that can wait. There's a line in the movie The Godfather where they say, Mr. Corleone is someone who wants to hear bad news right away. Good news can wait. And So what I discovered though from posting online was when I kept my message upbeat, I started to get feedback from people that was very positive and enriching, and it was like food. It was to see that other people resonated with these feelings about, like, people aren't as bad as you're being told. I would just get the nicest comments back. And I got recognized a couple of times. I got recognized once in an airport, and I was in the middle of a pitch for business in Newport Beach. I was in this office building. Immediately after having just finished our pitch, I was walking out with the chief client, and his office manager recognized me. And she said, "Oh my God." It was like, she had just met a celebrity. And so she was so excited. Yeah, right? Exactly. It's like, she's like, "Oh, this guy's great." And so I thought, wow, I couldn't have timed that better. But people, generally speaking, I have yet to experience, this sort of thing of being recognized and somebody pours a bowl of soup over my head. People, I don't get negative reactions, because what are you going to argue with? And I find that incredibly satisfying, that both my public persona and the things I most deeply believe in, which match, people feel like they know me. And I really love that people, when I sit down with strangers and they know me from my videos, we are already friends.
Yeah,
we talk to each other like we've known each other.
It enhances your marketability. You see, I was actually starstruck when we started the conversation, because I was like, wow, this is somebody who's worked for Saatchi and Saatchi. They've got all this clout on the internet, and who am I with my 200 followers and things of that nature? But when I looked at the work that you're doing, it's all about kindness. And it's all about really building your credibility and amplifying your reach and remarkability, and also just really helping people be. That to me was just like, wow, that's amazing. Now, my question after that.
I want to go. Okay, please go. I have something though. I want to pay you another compliment afterwards, but keep going.
Oh, great. So this is your show, Neal. All right. But anyway, is it, like we were talking about, being kind and the world the way it is, and how other people benefit from that fear and hope can wait and things of that nature. Is there an actual return on investment for being kind when everybody else is just being who they want to be and getting away with it?
I could give you a dozen examples of tremendous return on investment from kindness. I'll tell you one that's a little bit unexpected. So there is a farm in Whitsett, North Carolina, that was started by a couple whose son was developmentally disabled. He had an intellectual disability. So he was kind and loving, but he would not be able to take care of himself as an adult. And as he approached adulthood, his parents were getting to the age where now they were going to need care. And this presented a tremendous panic among the parents. They thought, who is going to take care of our son when we go? And so they started a farm called Peace Haven Farms, where the whole idea behind the farm is adults with developmental disabilities can come there and have a community and work on the farm and live among people who will care for them. And it's an ongoing for-profit farm with lovely people that come there to help, and a community of adults who would otherwise have nowhere to go. Peace Haven Farms has a number of dividends that get paid. The first is the staff absolutely loves the residents, and it's obvious. And the residents have a wonderful place to thrive and live as real people. And the college that's nearby has actually created a degree of this kind of operation. So the degree teaches you how to start and run a farm just like this for the same thing. So they're going to spread their thing. But here's the part that really gets me, Prosper. This is the part that just gets me about the dividend of kindness. The town nearby this farm is not a big town. It's the sort of place where everybody kind of knows each other. And those people, those developmentally disabled adults, will frequently come into the town. Now, what is the attitude of the townspeople towards these adults? Do they look down their noses at them? Do they bully them? Do they treat them as different? No, Prosper. They embrace them and make them part of the town's life. And they are safer in that town than if they were being followed by armed guards, because the entire town protects them and loves them. And here's what happens. When you ask people in Whitsett, what's it like to live here? It's wonderful. They love each other. They love each other for the kinds of people that they are to those people. They demonstrate every day what we're like here. I would venture to guess that the town is not exciting. It's not Manhattan. All right, it's not Sydney.
Yes.
It's a small town in rural North Carolina. But I'll bet you 85% of those people will never want to move. That's the dividend, is that they believe in themselves. They like who they are. And you know what's a really, really powerful thing in terms of a personal brand? Making somebody else feel good about themselves. There's a very famous example of this. Winston Churchill's mother was an American, and she had the opportunity to meet both William Gladstone and Benjamin Disraeli, one-time prime ministers of England at one time. Both incredibly brilliant men, competent in the role that they played, and they ran for office against one another, or their parties ran them against one another. And Madam Churchill had the opportunity to meet them both, and she was asked by a reporter, "What is your impression of the two men?" And she says, "Oh, when I had lunch with Mr. Gladstone, I felt absolutely certain he was the smartest man in England. But when I had lunch with Mr. Disraeli, I left the lunch feeling as though I was the smartest woman in England." Now, who do you think she voted for?
Well, obviously the person
Voted for the man who made her feel intelligent. You know, she was stimulated. She was so stimulated that she felt like, wow, that was fantastic. I was brilliant. So in the village, those adults make them feel worthwhile, make them feel smart and loving and human and protective. You know, all any man wants is to make his father and his wife proud. That's all they want. That's all they want in the world. I get no bigger thrill than when my wife says, "Can you fix this?" And then, 4 hours later, I'm going like this,
Go
done. Yeah.
Try it.
I just blew 4 hours to patch a hole in the wall. No, but you know what I'm saying is that when you feel useful, when you feel like you've earned your place in the world, you feel gratified and you feel solid. These people, in being part of this chain of events of a good thing, they feel worthwhile. So what does that have to do with the ROI of kindness? It's that it often appears in peculiar and unexpected ways, in counterintuitive ways. The value is not necessarily exactly where you find it. And so I'll give you another example of a small thing, the ROI of kindness, is that it is often a chain of good behavior. So I ordered a camera from a company called Photo Jojo, which was just this group of rambunctious photo geeks. And I get the box, and I had ordered a Lomo, which was a little, plastic camera that the Soviet Union used to make. So in the box was the camera and a couple of lenses. And then when I was checking the manifest, the invoice, it had the camera and the lenses. And the bottom, it said, no kidding, it said ROWR exclamation point $0. And I looked at it and went, Rower? Rower. And then there was a little plastic dinosaur in there, in the box, that some kid, some rambunctious person over at Photo Jojo decided to include, and it's like, this is the kind of people we are. All right. So I had this thing. I don't have the dinosaur right now, but I've got I always keep a pocket full of these kinds of things to leave with servers and baristas, when I'm in restaurants, just because it's fun. So I get that thing and I have it on my desk at work. And one day my friend Doug needs me to send him some document. So I send him, instead of an envelope, I send him a box. And in the box, it has an army man and the document. And the little army man has a note tied around his ankle. And the note says, "Doug, 15 years ago, you dropped me out of your pocket. And I have been looking for you ever since." And it's like, Jesus, man, take better care of your things. Okay. 2 weeks later, I get in the mail. I get my own box from Doug, and all it has is in it with a face drawn on it and a note that says, "You rock." Okay. So now I take the rock and I put it on my desk, and in walks one of my copywriters, this gloriously talented young woman. She sees it, and I tell her the story, and she goes, "Oh, Happy Rocks. What a great idea, Happy Rocks." Okay. She looks up Happy Rocks, only to discover that's an actual term that they use for a clay ball that is impregnated with flower seeds. And what they'll do is they'll throw them into empty lots so that when it rains, wildflowers bloom.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So she started making them, and she's in Manhattan on 8th Ave or whatever, and she sees this school with an empty lot next door. So she starts throwing these Happy Rocks into the yard. One of the teachers from the school runs down there and says, "What are you throwing in there?" Like, at first he's like, "What are you doing?" And then she explains the whole thing to him, and he goes, "Oh my God, that's glorious." So he goes home, starts making Happy Rocks for his math class, and any child that will do the extra credit problems, he'll give them a Happy Rock. So naturally, all the kids are doing the extra credit. So you can see this chain, right? All started because somebody at Photo Jojo just put a plastic dinosaur in the box. It tends to bring out the more playful part in human beings. And if you told me that because Photo Jojo put a plastic dinosaur in the box, that children at the 8th Street school are going to all do the extra credit, I would never have been able to tell you what the connection was. But that's how life is. When you are out in the world, like you are, Prosper, with your positive energy and your brilliant smile, right? You're not even aware of the good things you're causing. And that is why I always carry these things around, so that I can try to make a flight attendant's day or a barista, try to just make them laugh or smile, or said, "You earned this. I had the troll and I had the cheetah, and I think you're the cheetah." It's just,
Absolutely love that, because I keep a lot of doodads that I receive from people. Like, this is a frog, and the lady who sent me this was a nod to Brian Tracy's "Eat the Frog" set up, and then she sent me this 3D printed frog. It probably cost her nothing, but now with remarking this story about it and things of that nature, and I can't thank you enough for that. But you've created Storyfire, and I think it's one of those places that helps brands treat customers, first of all, like friends and not targets. That's a whole different language that, brands have always treated their people, target market, target audience, as if they are throwing, drawing a ball and hitting somebody else's face. And things like that. But how do you change this mindset and thought process when you're consulting with people that automatically have a language embedded in them of the stories that they tell themselves about the people who pay them?
Yeah. I think there's a very apt analogy in jujitsu and judo. I have this phrase that I like to use, which is, persuasion is not like boxing. It's more like gardening. If you're going to change somebody's mind, it's slow. You have to do it slowly. You have to win them over. And the way that we conduct business a lot, especially in the United States, is we try to bludgeon people into buying. We try to hammer at them enough times where they submit, never realizing that people don't like that. But when you watch jiu-jitsu practitioners and judo especially, a smaller person is often quite capable of dominating a much larger person by using the person's advantage against them. They don't push against a very hard and entrenched armored, opponent. They allow them to come towards them, and then they use their momentum and weight to pull them in. So you are never going to fight someone's internal winds. What you must do instead is throw up a sail and catch the internal winds to keep them moving and directed. The greatest of all of the advertising is the commercial that is essentially a love letter to the customer. And when someone feels seen and appreciated, they want to buy from you. That the nature of my program, Storyfire, by the way, it's very much about this, about the stories you tell are an opportunity for you to be your authentic self, unapologetic, and go and find the rest of the people out there in the universe who are going to not tolerate you, but appreciate you. Go where you're appreciated, not where you're just tolerated. Imagine how we apply that lesson to, say, a commercial interruption. When there's a target market, right, and there is pressure points, and you're trying to find out what they click and so forth, and you're doing all of the data and so forth. What you're not focused on is trying to reach someone's heart and make their day better. I'd like to describe an ad that Procter and Gamble did for the team, where to the advertising agency, I don't necessarily need to sell anybody anything. I just want you to write me a love letter to my customers. And what they came back with was so lovely. This was the idea. The commercial begins on 4 different babies in different households. Each of the babies, the infants, are falling on their little butts. Bloop, boom, gank. And the mother is always there to go, oops, back up you go. Come on, here, let's try again. Trying to get them to walk. And then the children are a little bit older. They're toddlers now. And it's the same thing. They're careening around, bumping into this and falling on their butts. And the mothers are there always to pick them up and encourage them. And now they're on ice skates, and they're on snowboards, and they're on skis, and they're playing hockey. And in each case, the little kids are, falling down and crashing and bumping into each other. And the stakes are a little higher. And so on it goes. Always the kids are advancing in their sports, and the mothers are always there to encourage them and pick them up and keep them going. Even to the point of, the ice packs and the rehab and so forth. And ultimately, all of those 4 babies have grown up to compete in the Olympics, in the Winter Olympics. And in each case, finally, the figure skater lands the perfect spin, and the hockey player scores the winning goal, and the snowboarder lands the jump, and the downhill skier manages to get the winning time. And in every single case, in the second of triumph, in the moment of victory, what do? They all look for their mothers. That's what they do. And at the end of the commercial, it just says Procter & Gamble because of mom.
Oh.
Now that is a love letter to mothers. Now, it's Monday morning or it's Monday afternoon, and they're shopping. And they could buy this detergent, Tide, or they could buy other brand. Or they could buy these Pampers or some other diaper, or these Bounty paper towels or something. And you know what happens? In the minds of the mothers, all of them are going, if it's less than $1, I'm in. If the difference is less than $1, I'm in. And that's loyalty beyond reason, because they felt seen. They felt acknowledged. They felt understood. Now you tell me, if I could persuade you to pay $1 more for the product, happily, that to me that's storytelling, as opposed to a list of, and A.G. Lafley's quote, after having seen the ad in its rough cut is he turns to the marketing guy and he says, you know what? It has to be about something more than clean clothes.
Oh, I can imagine, because now the mom is buying that, first of all, that being seen and heard, and then second of all, is now buying that excitement and pride that maybe one day the actions of me today will result in me congratulating my son as a success, and you can't take that away from a mother. Now, Neal, I know we could go on and on telling stories.
I know we could.
I've just been given a heads up that we're running out of tape here, Neal. What would be the best way that people can get a hold of you? And what's the best way to get started?
Yeah, I would highly recommend that people check out my Storyfire course. It's www.storyfire. That's one word, storyfire.net. People always, they go to storyfire.com, and unfortunately I don't have that one, but it's storyfire.net. I recommend that you go there and watch a couple of the demo videos. I think you might like what you see. And then also, I spell my name kind of funny, but you can find me at nealfoard.com, NEALFOARD. And if you go there, you'll find the first chapter of my audiobook, which I'm quite proud of. It's called Rancho Mad Hammer. So
great stuff. I'll definitely put all those links in the show notes so that everybody can get a lot of all these stories of kindness and authenticity and everything else that came along with it. Now, Neal, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I know we've been telling really good stories of kindness and things of that nature, but good things have to come to an end. I can't thank you enough for the time that you've just given us a glimpse into your world. And I think this is enough.
My pleasure.
To really prompt somebody to want to learn more and find out more about how they too can implement these in their business. So I'll be making sure that all those links are in the show notes below, and people can actually start incorporating kindness and genuine narratives into their business. And it's not just good ethics, as what Neal says. It's actually really good for your bottom line. It's
profitable.
Because
it is.
Fantastic.
And by the way, I have high hopes for you, Prosper. I see good things ahead for your podcast.
I appreciate that. We're going to continue telling these stories until I cannot. But in the meantime, bye for now.